December's Cor-Kinetic newsletter. And what I'd like to do is, first of all, wish you all a very happy Christmas and a very new year. Thank you everyone who supported us over the last year by attending our courses, coming to the conferences we've spoke at, to inviting us to their clubs, to interacting with us on Facebook and Twitter and our newsletters. So we'd like to thank you all very much for that. What we're going to talk about today is plantar fasciitis and a functional approach to foot assessment. In the article in the newsletter, we've already discussed in much finer detail some of the pathomechanics of the foot and pronation and supination. And what we'd like to show you in this small video is just a little bit more about how we might go about assessing the foot functionally, just to give you some kind of little insights into our thought process and how we think about the foot and understand the foot and understand the concept of pronation and supination. So simply, the foot has two roles, pronation and supination. Pronation, it allows us to unlock the foot and attenuate ground reaction forces and kick off the chain reaction of movement. Supination allows us to lock the foot up and then create a propulsive unit to allow us to swing our foot and kind of transfer our centre of mass. So, what we need to realise about the foot is that it's a torque converter. What that means is it takes rotation around one axis and creates rotation in another. And it does that through frontal plane eversion and then the adduction or the internal rotation of the talus bone. And that creates the chain reaction of movement in the rest of the system. Supination is the opposite. In fact, we get external rotation of the tibia, creating an inversion of the calcaneus. So we create supination at the subtalar joint. Now, these are two very important processes. One of the things that we think most important to dealing with plantar fasciitis is to create a rigid foot that locks up and allows us to create a propulsive unit. If we don't create that rigid propulsive unit, we find that the plantar fascia can get irritated by being under tensile stretch through both phases of the gait cycle, or in fact it may even be that we pronate and then pronate again, rather than pronation and supination. So we want to look at how the body influences the supination top down. So we don't believe that supination is just something the foot does. It's also something that happens from the top down drive, especially in the transverse plane of the rest of the body. So that would be the pelvis rotation to the same side as the back foot. We know that that would be the femoral rotation to the same side of the back foot, the tibial rotation to the same side of the back foot, which then creates the rotation, external rotation and relative internal rotation of the joint at the subtalar joint, which helps to lock that foot up, invert the heel, and along with that kind of windlass mechanism at the big toe, shorten the plantar fascia and help to create a very rigid unit to be able to propel off. So what we're going to do is just show you kind of 2 or 3 simple assessments that you can use. The first one would be a hands-on assessment of weight bearing. Simply all we can do is grab the heel, grab the calcaneus and evert it. So in the frontal plane we abduct it and take it away from the midline. And then what we want to do is be able to just see if that unlocks the forefoot, whether it becomes floppy, and that we can move it through all 3 planes. That tells us that the foot is going to be unlocked as the heel everts or moves in the frontal plane. Now, supination is the really big key. So we need to be able to know whether the foot actually locks up when the heel becomes inverted. So again, can we just grab the heel, invert it or put it towards the midline and then just see if that forefoot becomes much more rigid and locked up? We want to have a look at the difference between the foot unlocked and locked. Does it go through the process of both unlocking and locking? And that's a really important thing that we can do simply off weight bearing. Evert the heel, does the forefoot become unlocked? Invert the heel, does the forefoot become locked? One of the simple tests that we use at Cor-Kinetic is just a top-down driver to see if the feet will pronate and supinate. So supination is the most important thing we're looking for in the context of plantar fasciitis. But we can also see if the foot pronates as well. Simply all I'm going to do is rotate my arms one way and then rotate my arms the other. When I rotate my arms to the left and I get pelvic rotation to the left, femoral and tibial rotation to the left, that should also take the heel and invert it, creating a more supinated position of the foot. As I rotate to the right, my left foot should then pronate. What we want to look at is, does the foot simply pronate and supinate in the face of a top-down driver? And one of the things we're really looking for is also where that kind of motion comes from. Does it come from the mid-tarsal? Does it come from the rear foot? Where are the limitations? But the test is really simple. We are looking at the foot, first on the left, then on the right, to see whether it moves when I rotate from side to side, whether it goes through first pronation and then supination. That's really, really important. One of the things we can then move on and do is then put it in a bit of a more functional context. And we can simply do that by coming into a stride stance or a gate-like position. Now, if I want to know if my right foot, for this example, supinates, all I have to do is rotate my arms to the right. And within the functional context of the foot being at the back leg when we need supination, we can start to see if the real external rotation and the relative internal rotation of the joint create a supination. Moving on from that, another test that we like to look at is one that deals with stability. So we're kind of going to go back to the first test, but now we're simply going to do it on a single leg. And what this now provides is a stability demand. So we know that a lot of gait, especially swing phase when the foot starts to supinate, is done on a single leg. So it brings in a stability demand. Now I want to know how the foot deals with and operates with a stability demand. So again, can I simply stand on one leg? And again, can the foot control pronation? Does it supinate or does it choose to stay flat for stability? And then that would be something that we need to address. One of the things we need to realise about the body is that oftentimes it's not about length or muscle tension, etc., etc. It can be about stability. Lots and lots of people come in to see me and they don't need muscular length and they don't need strength. What they actually need is stability. And we can only really test stability on one leg, because otherwise we're fairly stable. So I would say that stability is one of the really, really primary factors that we want to understand the foot in its environment, with a stability demand. So thank you for watching. Please read the associated article. It goes into much, much more depth about the pathomechanics of plantar fasciitis and of the foot. What we wanted to show you are just some really quick and simple assessments that you can use just to give you a little bit more about the understanding of the foot during pronation and supination in its functional context, and also with a stability demand, so that we can truly understand how that foot is functioning and how it may be contributing to the success or the failure, and in this context, the success or the failure with relation to plantar fasciitis.